32 years of silence, 32 years of mystery, and now finally the first arrest. A 62-year-old businessman, once part of Annie McCarrick's circle, is now at the center of a murder investigation that has haunted Ireland for over 3 decades. But is this finally the man behind the disappearance, or is there much more hiding beneath this long, cold case? Today, we break down every chilling detail of how Annie McCarrick vanished, why the case went cold, and how one man has now become the prime suspect. Annie McCarrick was 26 years old when she disappeared. Born in New York, she had visited Ireland as a teenager and fell deeply in love with the country. Eventually, she made the move permanent, settling in Dublin to build a new life. She lived at St. Catherine's Court in Sandymount, Dublin 4, sharing her apartment with 2 other tenants. Annie worked as a waitress in 2 local spots, the Courtyard restaurant in Donnybrook and Café Java on Leeson Street. By all accounts, Annie was happy, well-adjusted, and excited for her future. In March of 1993, her mother was preparing to visit her in Dublin. Annie had made plans to host friends for dinner that weekend. She was actively preparing, calling friends, and organizing her schedule. Everything pointed to a young woman excited about life. But behind the surface, there were private concerns. Annie's family would later tell Gardaí that she had been having issues with a man who had allegedly struck her prior to her disappearance. This would become a haunting detail in the investigation years later. The last day Annie McCarrick was seen alive was Friday, the 26th of March 1993. That morning, just after 11, she was captured on CCTV at the Abe Bank branch located on Sandymount Road. This remains the last confirmed footage of Annie. After visiting the bank, Annie went grocery shopping at Quinsworth Supermarket, located nearby on Sandymount Road. The groceries she bought that morning were later found still unpacked in her apartment, suggesting that she never returned home after shopping. Annie had made plans for that weekend. She had invited friends over for dinner at her apartment on Saturday. But when her friends arrived, she was nowhere to be found. Calls went unanswered. She didn't show up for work. Her flatmates, who had traveled out of town for the weekend, also had no news. 2 days after Annie was last seen, on Sunday, the 28th of March, her friends reported her missing at the Irishtown Garda station. Later, multiple unconfirmed sightings were reported. Several witnesses claimed they saw a woman matching Annie's description boarding a number 44 bus headed toward Enniskerry, a scenic village south of Dublin. There were even unverified reports that she may have been seen near Johnny Fox's pub in that area, but none of these sightings have ever been fully confirmed. Her disappearance triggered a massive search, but no trace of Annie was ever found, and for decades the case remained frozen in mystery. From the very start, the investigation into Annie McCarrick's disappearance faced major challenges. In 1993, forensic technology was limited. CCTV was rare. Phone tracking was almost non-existent. And with no confirmed crime scene, detectives had little physical evidence to work with. In the first days, Gardaí followed multiple leads from possible bus sightings to tips about her being seen in the Wicklow Mountains. But none of these leads produced any solid evidence. Search teams combed through forests, rivers, and remote countryside, but no trace of Annie ever surfaced. Her parents, John and Nancy McCarrick, traveled from the United States and worked closely with authorities. Her father personally took part in ground searches around Enniskerry and Johnny Fox's pub areas where she was rumored to have gone. Despite the family's desperate efforts, the case quickly went cold. Over the years, multiple theories were suggested. Some speculated that Annie had voluntarily disappeared. Others feared she had fallen victim to an unknown predator. Forensic experts, journalists, and amateur sleuths debated every possible scenario, but without evidence or witnesses, nothing moved forward. In 2009, Annie's father, John McCarrick, passed away without ever knowing what happened to his only daughter. Her mother, Nancy, continued to speak publicly, urging anyone with information to come forward. But for almost 30 years, the case remained frozen, one of Ireland's most haunting unsolved disappearances. For nearly 30 years, Annie McCarrick's disappearance was treated as a missing persons case. But in March of 2023, everything changed. Gardaí officially upgraded the case to a murder investigation. What led to this major shift was a full re-examination of the entire file. Detectives from the Serious Crime Review Team reopened old statements, revisited earlier witnesses, and applied new forensic and investigative techniques that were not available back in the 1990s. During this review, Gardaí discovered significant inconsistencies. They identified multiple individuals from Annie's original circle of acquaintances, including one man who had reportedly been seen with her around the time of her disappearance. This man's past statements were compared to fresh interviews, and contradictions began to emerge. In total, Gardaí discovered that at least 5 different alibis connected to this man contained discrepancies. New witnesses were also located and interviewed, some even outside of Ireland. These developments, combined with fresh intelligence and confidential tips, gave detectives enough momentum to finally take action. After 3 decades of frustration, the investigation had suddenly gathered real momentum, and for the first time, the possibility of a major breakthrough seemed within reach. On the morning of June 12, 2025, Irish Gardaí made their first ever arrest in the Annie McCarrick case. A 62-year-old businessman was taken into custody at his home in County Meath. This man was not a stranger to Annie. Gardaí confirmed that he was one of her acquaintances back in 1993. At the time of her disappearance, he was 30 years old. His name has not been officially released to the public due to legal reasons, but investigators confirmed that he was long known to the investigation. Alongside his arrest, Gardaí launched a major search operation at a house located in Clondalkin, Dublin. This property, though not his current residence, was linked to the suspect's family during the early 1990s. Investigators believed the property could potentially hold long-buried evidence. The search was described as highly invasive. Specialized forensic teams moved in heavy equipment, broke up concrete floors, patios, and parts of the garden. Cadaver dogs, including one brought in from Northern Ireland, were deployed to search for any signs of human remains. To prevent media drones from capturing footage, Gardaí even established a temporary restricted airspace over the search site, a rare measure indicating how seriously authorities were treating this operation. While the suspect was being held, detectives also seized his phones, computers, and other electronic devices for forensic analysis, hoping that modern technology might reveal digital evidence previously unavailable back in the early 90s. This arrest marked the most significant development in the case since Annie vanished, but even now, it was not the end of the story. As the suspect sat in Garda custody, investigators turned their full attention to the property in Clondalkin. This house, located on Monastery Walk, had once been connected to the suspect's family in the early 1990s, around the exact time Annie McCarrick vanished. The search operation was large-scale and carefully coordinated. Gardaí brought in heavy machinery, including jackhammers, diggers, and excavation equipment, to break through solid concrete and patios, both inside the home and in the surrounding garden areas. Cadaver dogs, trained to detect human remains even decades old, were brought in to assist. One of the dogs was specially flown in from the Police Service of Northern Ireland due to its expertise in long-term decomposition cases. The Garda National Technical Bureau supervised the forensics, while external specialists stood by to analyze anything discovered on site. Gardaí even restricted the airspace above the home, blocking drones and aircraft to prevent media leaks and ensure the investigation remained fully confidential. The house search was invasive and slow, with concrete being carefully broken apart piece by piece. Floors inside the home, patios, and underground areas were all examined for possible remains or forensic traces linked to Annie. Though no major discovery was immediately announced, Gardaí confirmed that the property remains a focal point of the investigation. All materials recovered are being tested thoroughly as modern forensic technology allows for evidence recovery that would have been impossible back in 1993. This search may hold the key to finally solving what happened to Annie McCarrick, but for now, authorities continue to keep their findings closely guarded. After being held for questioning under Section 4 of Ireland's Criminal Justice Act, the 62-year-old businessman was released from custody without charge. Gardaí had questioned him for the maximum permitted time of 24 hours, which had been extended once by a Garda superintendent to allow further interviews. His release, however, does not mean he has been cleared. Gardaí were careful to state that he remains the prime suspect in Annie McCarrick's murder investigation. While no charges were filed immediately, detectives continue to analyze extensive evidence gathered during his detention. His electronic devices, including phones, laptops, and computers, were seized and are now undergoing detailed forensic examination. Digital forensics may uncover new clues, messages, or data long hidden on these devices. In cold cases, even deleted files or fragments of information can become critical. Additionally, the materials gathered from the Clondalkin property search are still being processed by forensic labs. These tests can take weeks or even months, especially when dealing with potential remains or degraded evidence after 32 years. The release reflects the Gardaí's careful approach. They are building their case methodically, ensuring that any charges they bring forward are backed by solid, court-admissible evidence. As of now, this man remains under investigation, and the Gardaí continue to treat the case as an active murder inquiry. For Annie McCarrick's family and the public, the long wait for answers continues, but the case has never been closer to a potential resolution. For Annie McCarrick's family, every new development reopens old wounds. Her mother, Nancy McCarrick, has carried the weight of this mystery for over 3 decades, desperately hoping for closure. In recent interviews, Nancy shared that even if her daughter's fate was tragic, she simply wants to bring Annie home and finally lay her to rest. Nancy's words have echoed with many. Whatever did befall her, it may have been accidental. I would love to be able to find her. Annie's father, John McCarrick, never lived to see any resolution. He passed away in 2009, having spent years searching the Wicklow Mountains, knocking on doors, and begging for information, all without success. The Irish public has followed the case with intense interest since the very beginning. For many in Ireland, Annie's disappearance became one of the country's most haunting and personal mysteries. Her case has been covered in documentaries, news specials, and podcasts for years, always returning to the same heartbreaking question: how can someone simply vanish? Now, with the arrest and ongoing investigation, the public reaction has been mixed, a combination of cautious hope and painful skepticism. While some feel that justice may finally be near, others fear that after so many years, the truth may still remain out of reach. The Gardaí have stated they will continue to keep the McCarrick family updated as the investigation progresses. For Nancy, and for everyone who has followed Annie's story, the search for answers remains deeply personal. After 32 years of mystery, this case has finally reached its most critical stage. A suspect has been identified, a property has been searched, devices have been seized, and for the first time, Annie McCarrick's family may be closer than ever to learning the truth. But huge questions still remain. Was this man involved directly in Annie's disappearance? Or could he be protecting someone else? Why did so many alibis from the time contain contradictions? And what, if anything, will forensic analysis of the Clondalkin property uncover? The answers may still be buried literally. We have to remember, 3 decades is a very long time. Memories fade, witnesses move on, evidence deteriorates. But today's technology allows investigators to extract DNA and digital data in ways that were impossible back in 1993. Even the smallest discovery could finally unlock this mystery. For Annie's mother Nancy, for the public, and for anyone who followed this heartbreaking story, the hope is simple: that the full truth will finally be revealed, and that Annie can at last be brought home. But what do you think? Was this suspect involved all along? Do you believe new evidence will finally solve the case? Or is this another painful dead end in one of Ireland's most haunting unsolved mysteries? Let me know your thoughts down below. And don't forget, subscribe for more deep dive true crime stories just like this one.